Mesopotamia, meaning the land between rivers, lay between the Tigris and Euphrates. These rivers flowed through dry land, but their yearly floods left behind rich, dark soil that made farming possible. This reliable food supply allowed large communities to grow and gave rise to one of the world's first civilizations. The Sumerians were the earliest people to build true cities, such as Uruk and Ur, where thousands lived together. They constructed massive stepped temples called ziggurats and developed new ways to organize society. One of their greatest achievements was the invention of writing. Using a reed stylus, they pressed symbols into wet clay to record crops, trade, property, and religious offerings. As cities grew richer, competition and war followed. Power shifted constantly, and new empires replaced old ones. The Akkadians, led by King Sargon, conquered the Sumerian cities and adopted their writing system, spreading it across a larger empire. Later, the Babylonians expanded its use even further. Under King Hammurabi, laws were written down and carved in stone so everyone could see them. Ancient Egypt. Far from Mesopotamia, along another great river, a powerful civilization was rising. This river was the Nile, flowing through the hot, sandy land of Egypt. Without it, Egypt would have been nothing but desert. Each year, like clockwork, the Nile flooded its banks. When the water retreated, it left behind rich, fertile soil. Crops grew easily, and the Egyptians believed this perfect rhythm was a gift from the gods themselves. Around 3150 BCE, Egypt was united into a single kingdom when Upper and Lower Egypt came under one ruler. These rulers were called pharaohs, and the Egyptians believed they were not merely kings, but living gods on earth. Because of this belief and their faith in life after death, the Egyptians built monuments unlike anything the world had ever seen. The pyramids were massive stone tombs built for pharaohs to use in the afterlife. Inside were food, treasure, furniture, and even boats meant to serve them forever. How these enormous structures were built without modern machines remains one of history's greatest mysteries. For centuries, Egypt was strong and wealthy. During the New Kingdom, pharaohs like Thutmose III and Ramesses II expanded the empire through war and built colossal temples. But Egypt slowly weakened. Priests gained power, floods failed, and faith in the pharaohs faded. Religious conflict, foreign invasions, and internal division tore the empire apart. By around 1070 BCE, Egypt was no longer united. Ancient China. Power in this land was never seen as permanent. Rule depended on balance, order, and the will of heaven itself. The Chinese believed emperors governed only as long as the universe allowed it. When times were good, it meant heaven approved. But when floods destroyed fields, famine spread, or war consumed the land, it was a sign that heaven had withdrawn its support. When that happened, rebellion was not wrong, it was necessary. Because of this belief, history moved in repeating waves. A family would rise, unite the land, and establish a dynasty. For a time, order followed. Laws worked, harvests succeeded, and peace held. Slowly, corruption crept in, power weakened, the dynasty collapsed, and another rose to take its place. This cycle repeated again and again across centuries. Early rulers of the Shang dynasty sought guidance through oracle bones, carving questions into shells and bones to read the will of the gods. Later dynasties, like the Han and Tang, ushered in long periods of strength and creativity. From these eras came ideas that reshaped civilization itself: paper, printing, and gunpowder, lasting long after emperors and dynasties faded into history. The Roman Empire. Across the Mediterranean, a small village on 7 hills by the Tiber River grew into one of history's greatest empires, Rome. Legend says it was founded by twin brothers, Romulus and Remus, who were raised by a wolf. Whether true or not, Rome began small but dreamed big. The Romans were incredible builders. They constructed roads so straight and strong that some still exist today. Aqueducts carried fresh water across miles into the cities. They built the Colosseum, a massive stadium holding 50,000 spectators for gladiator fights and wild animal shows. Rome conquered vast lands, stretching from Britain in the north to Egypt in the south, and from Spain in the west to Mesopotamia in the east. Roman law united diverse peoples, granting citizens rights wherever they traveled. For about 200 years, peace reigned across the empire in a period called the Pax Romana. Trade flourished and ideas spread. It seemed Rome would last forever, but success brought problems. Emperors became greedy, senators fought for power, and the army chose rulers. In 50 years, Rome saw over 50 emperors, many murdered. Emperor Constantine tried to save the empire by embracing Christianity and moving the capital to Constantinople, which split the empire. As the western half weakened, tribes once kept out pushed harder. In 410, the Visigoths sacked Rome. In 476, the last emperor, the teenager Romulus Augustulus, was deposed. Rome didn't fall in a single moment. It slowly unraveled, year by year, until the empire that had once seemed eternal disappeared, leaving behind a legacy that still shapes the world today.
The Islamic Golden Age. After Rome faded, a new civilization rose in the deserts of Arabia. Islam spread quickly, uniting people across the Middle East, North Africa, and beyond, creating vast and powerful empires. One of the greatest was the Abbasid Caliphate. Its capital, Baghdad, became the most advanced city in the world for nearly 500 years. While Europe was in the Dark Ages, Baghdad shone as a beacon of learning and knowledge. The Abbasids built the House of Wisdom, a place that was both a library and a university. Scholars came from all corners of the world, bringing books in Greek, Persian, and Indian languages, which they translated into Arabic. These scholars explored mathematics, inventing algebra. They studied the stars, mapped the night sky, and advanced medicine. Their medical books would guide European doctors for centuries. At its height, the empire stretched from Spain in the west to India in the east. Trade along the Silk Road carried goods and ideas between continents. For a time, the Islamic world was the most advanced civilization on earth. But power eventually weakened. Governors in distant regions grew independent, keeping taxes for themselves. In 1258, disaster struck. The Mongols, fierce warriors from Central Asia, besieged Baghdad. When the city fell, the Mongols destroyed much of it, burning buildings and throwing countless books into the river. So much black ink flowed that people said the river turned black. The Mongol Empire. The Mongols came from vast grasslands called the steppes. They were nomads, moving with their animals and living in tents, following the grass for their horses and sheep. In 1206, a man named Temujin united the warring tribes and took a new name, Genghis Khan, meaning universal ruler. He and his descendants would build the largest connected empire in human history. From a young age, Mongols were trained to ride horses and shoot arrows at full gallop. Their armies moved quickly, striking where enemies least expected them. Cities that resisted were destroyed as warnings, while those that surrendered often survived. The Mongols also protected trade routes across Asia and Europe, making travel safer than ever before. This period of peace and connectivity was called the Pax Mongolica. But the empire faced internal challenges. After Genghis Khan's grandson Mongke died, his brothers fought over succession. The empire split into 4 khanates, each ruled by a different branch of the family, which eventually came into conflict with each other. Disaster struck again with the Black Death, a plague that killed millions. Trade slowed and the empire's cohesion weakened. In China, Mongol rule under the Yuan dynasty collapsed when a former monk led a rebellion in 1368, founding the Ming dynasty. One by one, the khanates fell. The empire that had conquered most of the known world could not hold itself together. The Mongols, feared and unstoppable in their rise, eventually became another example of power that grew vast, thrived, and ultimately fractured, leaving a lasting legacy across continents. The Aztec Empire. Far across the ocean, in lands the Mongols never reached, another civilization was rising. The Aztecs built their capital, Tenochtitlan, right in the middle of a lake in what is now Mexico. To grow food, they created floating gardens called chinampas, rafts of reeds covered in mud that supported crops. Roads, called causeways, connected the city to the shore. When Spanish explorers saw Tenochtitlan, they were astonished.
The city was larger and more organized than any in Spain. Markets offered fresh vegetables, cacao beans, tropical feathers, jewelry, and cloth. Pyramids and temples rose above the city. The Aztecs conquered nearby peoples and demanded tribute: gold, cacao, feathers, and precious stones, all flowing into Tenochtitlan, making the empire rich and powerful. But the tribute system created resentment. Conquered peoples longed to rebel, and their opportunity came in 1519, when Spanish conquistadors led by Hernán Cortés arrived. The Spanish had weapons the Aztecs had never seen: steel swords, armor, guns, and horses, which seemed like giant monsters. The Spanish also made allies of those who hated Aztec rule. Together, they laid siege to Tenochtitlan. After months of fighting, the city finally fell in 1521. The floating gardens, markets, temples, and pyramids were destroyed, and the Aztec Empire came to an abrupt end. The Persian Empires. In the lands between Mesopotamia and India, great empires kept rising and falling. These were the Persian Empires. Persia is the old name for what we now call Iran. The first great Persian empire was called the Achaemenid Empire. It was started by a king named Cyrus the Great around 500 years before Jesus was born. Cyrus conquered a huge amount of territory. His empire stretched from Egypt to India, from the Mediterranean Sea to Central Asia. A later king named Darius the Great made the empire even bigger and better organized. He created a single currency. He made one official language for government business. He built amazing roads so messengers could travel quickly across the empire. He divided the empire into regions called satrapies. Each region had a governor called a satrap who was loyal to the king. But after Darius died, problems started. His son Xerxes became king. Under Xerxes, the satraps started to act independent. They kept wealth for themselves. They acted like little kings in their own regions. Rebellions broke out in places like Egypt, where people hated Persian rule. Then came Alexander the Great from Macedonia. He invaded Persia with his army. Alexander defeated the Persian forces. After Alexander died, new Persian empires formed. The Parthian Empire came next, then the Sassanid Empire. Each time, Persia became powerful again. The Sassanid Empire finally ended when Muslim armies conquered Persia in the year 651. The pattern repeated.
The Maya. In the jungles of Central America, another remarkable civilization thrived. The Maya lived across what is now Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras. They built towering cities deep in the jungle, with pyramids rising above the trees. Their artists carved intricate sculptures and painted colorful murals. The Maya developed a complex writing system of symbols and pictures, and they were brilliant mathematicians and astronomers. The Maya studied the stars with great care. They created calendars that tracked time with astonishing accuracy and could even predict eclipses. During their golden age, from around 250 to 900 CE, kings ruled from grand palaces, priests performed ceremonies atop pyramids, and markets bustled with trade. Farmers grew corn, beans, and squash in the fertile lands surrounding the cities. But between 800 and 900 CE, many great southern cities were mysteriously abandoned. Scholars believe a severe drought caused crops to fail. The Maya did not vanish. Communities continued in the northern regions and highlands, preserving their culture. The Indus Valley. The Indus Valley civilization, also called the Harappan civilization, flourishing around 3300 to 1300 BCE. It developed along the fertile floodplains of the Indus River and its tributaries in what is now modern-day Pakistan and northwest India. The people of the Indus Valley lived in well-planned cities such as Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, and Dholavira. Cities were laid out in grid patterns with straight streets and sophisticated drainage systems. Houses were made of baked bricks and often had private wells and bathrooms, showing a high concern for hygiene. Agriculture was the foundation of their economy. They grew wheat, barley, peas, and squash. Livestock like cattle, goats, and buffalo were also important. The Indus people engaged in extensive trade, not only within the region but also with Mesopotamia, exchanging goods such as beads, metals, and pottery. The Indus people left behind thousands of seals and inscriptions, though their writing has not been fully deciphered. These small carved seals often featured animals and possibly represented trade, ownership, or religious symbols.
Religion likely involved nature worship, fertility symbols, and ritual bathing, hinting at spiritual practices connected to daily life. Craftsmanship was highly developed. They produced pottery, jewelry, tools, and ornaments made from metals and semi-precious stones. The civilization declined around 1900 BCE, likely due to environmental changes such as river shifts and climate changes,